So, have you ever noticed how some stories, the ones we've known forever, nursery rhymes, fairy tales, how they just feel sort of baked into our brain?
Oh, absolutely. They're comforting, aren't they? So
Yeah,
familiar. But it's interesting how we rarely stop to think about what might be happening between the lines of those simple tales.
exactly. We think we know them inside out. But what if there's this whole other layer?
Well, there definitely is. Every time you revisit them, your mind isn't just passively receiving the story.
Mm,
It's actively bringing in everything else you know, other stories, your life experiences, the
mhm.
cultural context. It's never really a clean slate.
Right. And today, we're diving deep into a literary world that takes all that hidden stuff, all those unspoken rules, and just runs wild with it. We're talking about Jasper Fforde's Nursery Crime series.
Ah, yes. Fantastic stuff like The Big Over Easy, The Fourth Bear, and that great short story, The Locked Room Mystery.
Yeah. And Ford does something pretty audacious. He takes these two genres that seem totally separate, sweet little nursery rhymes and gritty detective fiction, and he blends them.
He really does, and it creates something completely unique, incredibly funny, and surprisingly deep. It makes you think about stories themselves.
Totally. And what's really cool, and kind of our mission for this deep dive, is to unpack how he does it. It's not just throwing genres together for laughs, though it is hilarious.
No, he's doing something much cleverer. He uses techniques like literalized metaphor and that genre blending to actually make the whole tradition of fairy tales the thing being investigated.
It's like the story is investigating itself.
Mhm.
And exploring this series gives you this amazing shortcut to understanding some really intricate literary ideas. It might genuinely change how you think about reading.
That's the hope. And a lot of our insights today come from a really sharp analysis by Miriam Fernández-Santiago called Where Else But Reading? Blending Genres in Jasper Fforde's Nursery Crime Series. It's a great guide through Fforde's, well, genius.
Okay, so we've got the big picture, this wild blend of nursery rhymes and detective stories. Let's actually step into the world that Ford built. It all happens in a city called
Reading.
Right, and this is where Forde starts playing his games immediately, because Reading is described just like the real English city, geographically and all that.
But there's a massive twist, isn't there?
A huge one. The entire logic of the city, how everything works, is dictated by the literal meaning of its name, reading.
Whoa. So the city itself is reading.
Essentially, yes. It becomes this incredible allegorical setting for the act of reading. The implication is that everything happening there happens because someone, somewhere, is reading it. It's a kind of metadiegetic, literalized, critical frame, if you want the fancy term.
Okay, that's bending my brain already. So if the city is reading, who polices this place?
Ah, that would be the Nursery Crime Division, the NCD. Their name says it all, right? Their job is to, and I quote, oversee all inquiries involving any nursery characters or plots from poems and owner stories.
So right off the bat, you know this isn't your standard police procedural.
Not even close. It immediately flags the deep genre blend, and the detectives themselves are the perfect embodiment of this. Let's start with the main guy, Detective Inspector Jack Sprat.
Jack Sprat, like eat no fat Jack Sprat.
The very same, but he's so much more. He's a mashup. He is that nursery rhyme character and also the Jack from Jack and the Magic Beans.
Okay.
But he's also a classic detective, sort of like Holmes or Dupin, sharp and analytical. And then he's got elements of a hard-boiled detective, but he's also somehow a devoted family man.
Wow, that's a lot packed into one character.
It is. He's incredibly layered.
Yeah.
And then you've got his partner, Sergeant Mary.
Mary? Quite contrary.
You got it. She's Mary, quite contrary. But Forde also layers in vibes from a femme fatale in a German experimental rock song called, wait for it, Mary, Mary.
No way. That's brilliant.
It is. And her being new to nursery crime is actually super useful for us, the readers, because she doesn't get the weird rules at first.
So Sprat has to explain everything to her.
Exactly. He explains the methods, the logic of this world to her, and by doing that, he's explaining it to you as you read along. It's a clever way to guide the audience.
Okay, stepping back a bit then. What's the point of all this blending? Why mash up these characters and genres so thoroughly?
Well, the deeper function, according to Fernández-Santiago's analysis, is to show how reading actually works for us right now. When you read anything, you're never just taking in the words on the page.
You mean you bring your own stuff to it?
Precisely. Your personal history, your cultural background, all the other books you've read, the movies you've seen, it all gets activated. Your brain makes connections constantly, layering meanings. For Forde's world makes that internal, intertextual experience visible and literal.
That makes sense. It's like he's showing us the wiring inside our heads when we read.
Yeah.
Which brings us to one of his key tools, right? This idea of literalized metaphor.
Yes. This is absolutely central to how the nursery crime world operates. It's not just a gag, it's a core mechanic.
So how does it work exactly?
Okay, so the idea, drawing from folks like Maurice Quinlan, is that you take a metaphor, especially a dead metaphor, one where we've forgotten the original literal meaning, like deadline or even just a pun, and you deliberately contrast its forgotten literal meaning with its common metaphorical meaning. You bring the literal meaning back to life, basically, and that creates this ironic, funny, often really self-aware effect. It makes you notice the language itself.
Gotcha. Can you give us an example from the books? That's where it really clicks, I think.
Absolutely. The classic one is Humpty Dumpty. We all know Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. In Fforde's writing, that fall isn't just an accident in a rhyme. It's a potential crime scene investigated by the NCD.
Wait, why a crime?
Because this Humpty Dumpty, the one living in Reading, is explicitly described as having an exceptional sense of balance and being used to sitting on walls.
Ah. So if he's so good at balancing, how did he fall? It wasn't just inevitable?
Exactly. The dead metaphor of the fall, the thing we just accept in the rhyme, becomes a literal question, a point of investigation. Did he fall, or was he pushed? It brilliantly turns the familiar on its head.
That's fantastic. Any others?
Oh, plenty. Think about Goldilocks and the Three Bears. The NCD gets involved. Why? Not just because she broke in and ate porridge.
Yeah.
It's because, in Reading, porridge consumption by bears is literalized as a crime against public health.
Seriously. Public health.
Yep. Suddenly, you've got talking bears facing health code violations. It takes the anthropomorphism of the fairy tale literally and applies real-world, albeit absurd, consequences.
It's absurd, but strangely logical within that world.
Precisely. And maybe the most meta example is in the short story, The Locked Room Mystery. There's this common critical idea that the locked room plot is a dead device in detective fiction.
Right, that it's been done to death. It's cliche.
Exactly. So what does Forde do? He literalizes that critical assertion. The locked room mystery device itself becomes a character, and the NCD investigates its death. And the conclusion isn't that it was killed off by overuse, but that the device itself, being dead, committed suicide.
That is just layers upon layers of cleverness.
Wow. It's a perfect example of metafiction, the story commenting on its own genre conventions by making them literal plot points.
And you can see how this connects back to us as readers, right? We do this kind of thing unconsciously. We read old fairy tales through modern eyes, applying our own ideas.
We absolutely do. We superimpose modern values, psychological interpretations, whatever, onto these old structures. For Forde's literalizations just make that process visible, almost forcing us to acknowledge the literary frameworks we're always using, often without even realizing it.
So he's not just telling a story. He's shown us how stories work and how we interact with them.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have these literalized metaphors. How does he actually build the plots? He's using familiar stories, but making them new.
Right, he's not just retelling them. The analysis calls the structure of reading a paraleptic intersection, which sounds complex.
Yeah, a bit.
But think of it like different story worlds bleeding into each other, overlapping in unexpected ways within the same reality level, and the whole series functions as a parallel.
Parallel, like a parallel sequel.
Kind of. It means he builds new detective stories within the gaps, the many blank spaces of the original nursery rhymes and folktales. Those old stories are often very simple, very schematic, leaving lots of room to invent.
Okay, that makes sense, like filling in the background details, but making those details the main plot.
Exactly. And Jack Sprat himself is the perfect example. He still has to live out his original narrative constraints. He can't eat fat. He sometimes trades cows for beans. He feels compelled to kill giants.
That's his baseline programming almost.
Right. But simultaneously, in the time between those required actions, he's the head of the NCD, a serious detective investigating Humpty's fall or, figuring out the explosive potential of giant cucumbers.
Giant cucumbers, of course. So his life is these two narratives running in parallel and constantly intersecting.
Precisely. It complicates the simple original story massively, weaving in all these new subplots that connect in surprising ways.
This leads to a really interesting kind of suspense, doesn't it? Because often, with these nursery rhymes, we already know the ending. Humpty falls, Jack gets the beans.
That's where the concept of replotting, which Margaret Rulick discusses, comes in. Forde creates what she calls anomalous suspense. because you know the original rhyme or tale.
Uh-huh.
Fforde can then farcically meddle with their scripts, as Fernández-Santiago puts it. The suspense isn't about what will happen. You probably know Humpty will fall eventually. The suspense comes from how on earth that known outcome happens amidst all the crazy new elements Fforde throws in. How does the inevitable occur despite all the interference?
So you're watching to see how he navigates the chaos to reach the familiar point, or maybe even slightly subvert it at the last second.
Exactly. It makes the old stories feel completely fresh. It defamiliarizes them. But it also reinforces the original pattern because you're constantly aware of it. He breaks the illusion of the simple plot to create this new, blended, much more complex narrative illusion.
That's a really smart way to generate engagement, even with predictable source material. Okay, let's talk about the fundamental rules of this universe. How does reading actually work? You've got fairy tale magic and logic clashing with detective reasoning.
Yeah, that's the core tension, isn't it? Fairy tales run on the fantastic, on magic and archetypes. Detective fiction traditionally relies on realism, deduction, logic. How can those possibly coexist?
It seems impossible.
Well, Furt's solution is ingenious. He basically throws out conventional deduction, or at least heavily modifies it. Spratt's nursery crime investigative method uses fairy tale logic as its basis. It's a parody of Sherlock Holmes, almost.
So less fingerprints, more fairy tale tropes.
Pretty much. Spratt looks for patterns, and especially the rule of three. 3 bears, 3 little pigs, 3 billy goats gruff.
Right, the magic number in folklore.
Exactly. It can be quantitative, like the number of characters, or qualitative, like small, medium, large, or even stupid, stupid, or stupidest. He knows the archetypes cold.
What kind of archetypes?
Things like stepmothers, they're usually evil. Woodcutters always come into fame and fortune. Orphans are 10 a penny. And crucially, pigs, cats, bears, and wolves frequently anthropomorphize. He expects animals to talk and act like people because, in this world, they do.
So his deductions are based on literary conventions, not real-world logic.
Precisely. The illusion of reason from detective fiction gets replaced by the literary conventions ruling fairy tales. The fantastic becomes the logical framework. If it happens in a fairy tale, it's plausible, even likely, in reading.
And language itself plays a huge role in this, right? You mentioned wordplay earlier.
A massive role. Elena Anastasaki calls wordplay rhyme, and these literalized conventions the actual narrative motor of the series. Figurative language doesn't just describe things, it makes things happen.
How does that work?
It causes this effect called metafictional paraleptic decontextualization.
Whoa, okay, unpack that.
Yeah, it sounds intense. Basically, it means language breaks free from its expected context and meaning to create new possibilities, new fictional spaces. A pun isn't just a joke, it might create a real situation or character.
So the wordplay actually builds the world.
Yes. Semantic connections, the way words relate to each other, are governed by linguistic approximation and literary precedents, meaning by how words sound alike or by how they've been used in other stories.
So you lose maybe some realism.
But you gain this incredibly consistent internal logic based on language itself. The verisimilitude, the believability, comes from the self-reflective inevitability of the wordplay. It feels right because the language makes it right.
Which leads us perfectly to rhyme. You said rhyme has power here.
Immense power. In reading, rhyme has 2 very powerful attributes. The capacity of making things happen, like magic incantations, and the capacity to uncover truth.
So rhyme isn't just decoration, it's like a physical law.
It fundamentally is. Think about Jack Spratt again. He must not eat fat. Mary must be contrary. It's not just their character trait from the old rhyme.
It's imposed on them.
Yes, by virtue of rhyming imposition, as the analysis puts it. The rhyme itself compels their actions, dictates reality. Fforde essentially replaces the realistic cause and effect of normal detective stories with the binding force of language, especially rhyme.
That is just fascinating. The entire world runs on literary rules made literal.
Exactly. It's a world built from words, about words, governed by words.
Okay, so wrapping this up then, what's the big takeaway for you, the listener, from diving into Fforde's nursery crime series?
Well, it's obviously a hugely entertaining ride, first and foremost. The blend of humor, mystery, and sheer linguistic cleverness is amazing.
For sure. But beyond the fun.
Beyond the fun, it's this incredible commentary on storytelling itself, on literary history, on how genres work, and maybe most importantly, on our own active role as readers in making sense of it all.
It makes you much more aware of what's going on when you read anything, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Fardar kind of trains you, empowers you to be a more active, more critical reader. You start noticing the blank spaces in stories, the dead metaphors just waiting to be brought back to life, the underlying structures.
You start reading like a detective yourself almost,
Oh,
looking for the hidden literary clues.
that's a great way to put it. It encourages this richer, more intertextual way of understanding stories, seeing the connections, the layers, the echoes of other texts. It really can transform how you engage with narratives.
So maybe a final thought to leave everyone with.
Okay, how about this? The next time you pick up any book, or maybe even just reread a familiar childhood story, take a second to think.
Huh.
What unspoken rules, what literary conventions are quietly shaping this narrative? What hidden connections, what literalized metaphors, or maybe even what rules of three might be lurking just beneath the surface, subtly guiding your whole experience of reading?